when we are working on behavioral change, it is like a mountain climb. I mean, for some of us, we've been repeating these patterns for decades. So, it is a little bit of a climb. It is a process. And sometimes we look up at that mountain climb and it just feels so overwhelming. And we just want to shoot right up to the top. If you try to climb Mount Everest in one shot, you die. You can't, because your body has to acclimate to the atmosphere and altitude. And I feel like emotional growth work is similar. So often when people come in, they're just overwhelmed. How am I ever going to stop doing these things that I've been doing? Or how am I ever going to get out of this toxic relationship or this unhealthy job? And the truth is, you're not going to do it in one shot. But this work, what we do, just like with Mount Everest, is they go one base camp at a time. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hello, and welcome to my very first episode of my very first podcast, Grow with Robin Breckenridge. I'm so excited to be here and connect to everyone who's listening. In this episode, I want to share a little bit about who I am, what led me to become a life and relationship coach, and why I'm so insanely passionate about this work. So whether you are new to self-development or you are already deep into your own journey, my hope is that this podcast feels like a safe place for you to explore growth, healing, and transformation. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have a few degrees in education and used to be a teacher. I worked with emotionally impaired kids and teens. I have a master's degree in special education, and I also taught kindergarten for 5 years, which taught me a whole lot about life and people and taking care of your inner child, but we'll get into that later. But along that journey, my trajectory of my life changed due to my exploration of the work that I teach my clients. And so I tell everybody that what qualifies me the most to do this work is I definitely have an education, I have certifications and trainings, but definitely what qualified me the most is my lived experience. Because I did not learn the things that I teach and the things that I'm going to share with you on this podcast. I did not learn them in a book or in a class. These are things that, these are challenges that I've experienced myself. All of the tools and insights that I teach my clients are all things that I have used myself in my own life, and I embody those tools, and they have just unequivocally changed my life. So I didn't learn these things necessarily in a book or a class. A lot of what I've acquired is experiential learning. So to take you guys back, my journey into this work really started in my early 20s when I found myself in a really toxic, abusive relationship. And for the first time in my life, I found myself really stuck in something that wasn't healthy for me. It brought up some patterning in me that I wasn't quite clear on. And so not only was I experiencing a lot of pain and suffering in my life, I also was really frustrated with myself for, being a smart person and not being able to make what I considered at that time just really logical choices. So it really started me on a path of self-discovery where I read, any self-help book that I could get my hands on. I started therapy. I went to all the You Can Heal Your Life weekend retreats, and yet I still suffered with some of the same patterning. So even after all those books and all those weekends and all that therapy, I still found myself stuck in the same unconscious patterns. And I really wanted to get better. Definitely where I was in my life was not for lack of trying. I was really trying. I just could not find the right actionable tools at that time. So eventually I found myself sitting across from my therapist, and I was, regurgitating the same things I think I talked about probably every week when I went in about my kind of pain and drama and trauma of the previous week. And she looked at me and said, Robin, you just need to learn how to love yourself. And I remember almost in a begging way asking her, like, okay, well, just how the fuck do you do that? Like, just tell me how to love myself. But what's the formula? I'll do it. I'll do anything. And I never got a concrete answer. So fast forward and continuing on in the same patterns and not really being able to find the correct help, I ended up hitting what I call my relational bottom, where, it was a sink or swim moment. It was basically the pain of staying the same became greater than the unknown pain of change. And I decided to take a big step, and I packed up my bags and spent a bunch of money and went to a retreat facility for a few weeks. And I really worked on these things that I was struggling with, like not knowing how to love myself, people pleasing, not even understanding that I had a wounded inner child that I was basically just taking to the same situations that had harmed her growing up over and over again, and then expecting to get better. I didn't know anything about boundaries, and what I did know was honestly trash at that time. I think I thought boundaries just meant you went up in someone's face and pointed and said, you can't do that to me, but continued to stay and tolerate. I didn't know anything about narcissism and narcissistic abuse. So there was a lot of things within that time frame that I learned, and this whole world was opened up to me. And it wasn't an overnight thing. I never, ever want to sell that my story was one of those where I had an aha moment and everything changed. It's definitely not how it went for me. It was practicing things over and over again. So I decided to be brave enough to walk up to the challenging feelings and the unconscious patterns of low self-esteem, people-pleasing, hiding, self-abandonment, shame, guilt, and so many more, and learn how to truly be in a healthy, loving relationship with myself once and for all. I decided to find the answer to that question that my therapist asked me so many years before. And in doing so, it helped heal me. And now it has led me and inspired me to share those answers, those tools, and that path with other people who are feeling the same way that I was. So I was very aware that I could not continue doing the same things I was doing before. I had to find the strength to do a lot of things differently in my life. So I began researching, learning, experimenting with tools and many modalities of healing, tools to build self-trust, change behavior patterns that were no longer serving me, to learn techniques of self-love, how to have healthy boundaries, and foundational relational skills that I did not have previously. It definitely wasn't always comfortable, but it was for sure purpose-driven. It brought me into a healthier relationship with myself and others. It helped me heal old wounds. And I can confidently tell you that I have a healthy, aligned life now. So I now have that answer. How do you love yourself? And self-love is definitely not just a feeling, and it's not something that just some of us have and others don't. It's a learned skill, and it takes practice, and it takes the right teacher. And I'm so honored to be that teacher for all of you through this podcast. So my own personal journey inspired me to create a process for self-love and building safe and healthy relationships with yourself and other people. So for almost a decade, I've been helping guide individuals and couples to live more conscious, aligned, and fulfilling lives. So what sets my work apart is that because of my own healing journey and integrating everything that I teach, I'm able to hold a safe space for my clients, and I'm able to meet them where they are in their healing journey. My coaching practice is really based off one phrase, that trauma is healed through safe relationships. I believe that is 100% true. So in my individual work, we create a safe space for them to be authentically themselves, to be witnessed, and in that to be supported and have somebody that emotionally attunes to them and not be shamed and not have to feel guilted or judged in that relationship. So my goal in this podcast is to create that same space on this platform that I do with my individual clients. Another thing that sets my work apart is my ability to simplify these big abstract concepts like emotions and feelings and boundaries and deliver them in digestible and actionable ways. So my goal is always to make complex concepts feel approachable and actionable, one step at a time, or in this case for the podcast, one episode at a time. And I'll tell you guys what I tell my clients in the first session, which is when we are working on behavioral change, it is like a mountain climb. I mean, for some of us, we've been repeating these patterns for decades. So, it is a little bit of a climb. It is a process. And sometimes we look up at that mountain climb and it just feels so overwhelming. And we just want to shoot right up to the top. And I have a weird fascination with Mount Everest. I'm afraid of heights. I would never climb Mount Everest, but for some reason it's fascinating to me. So I've watched a lot of documentaries and done a lot of late night Google wormholes on Mount Everest. But if you try to climb Mount Everest in one shot, you die. You can't, because your body has to acclimate to the atmosphere and altitude. And I feel like emotional growth work is similar. So often when people come in, they're just overwhelmed. How am I ever going to stop doing these things that I've been doing? Or how am I ever going to get out of this toxic relationship or this unhealthy job? And the truth is, you're not going to do it in one shot. But this work, what we do, just like with Mount Everest, is they go one base camp at a time. And some of those base camps, they spend 2 or 3 weeks acclimating to that. And my guess is it's probably not comfortable. So similar in this work is we are not going to climb all the way up to the top of the mountain. We are going to take it one quote unquote base camp at a time. And the way that we're going to do that in this podcast is we're going to take it one episode at a time. And lucky for you guys, when we're climbing Mount Everest, my understanding is most people don't do that on their own. They hire what's called a sherpa, and that sherpa has climbed the mountain before. And they help lead the people up the mountain. So in this case, I'm your Sherpa. Guess what? I've climbed this mountain before. In fact, I've climbed a lot of mountains in my life as far as the analogy of emotional mountains go. I've never really climbed a mountain, but I know these mountains and I've climbed them myself. And then now I've helped thousands of people climb them. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't worry. We're going to climb this mountain together. And I'm going to be so intentional that every single episode of this podcast is a scaffolded build up that mountain. And what I know about the universe is that it doesn't usually give us the whole staircase at one time, but it will give us one step in that staircase at a time. And that's my goal in this podcast. It's going to be one step that's going to lead you up the mountain. And when it comes to mountains, when we're in a lower part of the mountain, we don't have the same vantage point. So I promise you that where you're looking at right now, your environment, when we start climbing and we start growing our consciousness and growing our relational skills, there's going to be a vantage point coming up pretty soon in your life that you can't see right now. And it's amazing. It's probably even better than you could imagine. And that is one of the reasons why I'm going to bring incredible guests on this podcast that have climbed the mountain, that can tell you from their vantage point now what you have to look forward to in your climb and why it's so worth it when it gets uncomfortable. So here's what you can expect in this podcast. It's going to be a space for deep conversations, practical tools, and a safe space for you to learn, grow, and heal. I'm going to share insights from my coaching practice, my personal experience, and transformative tools that I teach my clients and again, live every day of my life. So we're going to talk about a lot of things, but some of the things we're going to talk about are topics like self-care and self-connection, learning how to have healthy boundaries. I'm going to teach you a little bit about attachment styles, changing behavioral patterns and unconscious patterns that are not serving you anymore in your life. We're going to talk about parts of self, inner child, inner teenager. And overall, I'm going to just teach you everything I know to help you improve your life and relationships. So thank you so much for being here today. I am so honored to be in the position to share my work and what I'm so passionate about with so many more people. My goal in this work is to help as many people as I can and to be the light in the dark room of unconsciousness for people and to help people suffer less because I know it's possible. So if this episode resonated with you, please subscribe or share it with somebody that you think might benefit. You can connect with me on Instagram, TikTok, or on my website, robinbreckenridge.com. And I don't even know what to say. I'm so excited. So in our next episode, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're going to be covering in the podcast, give you a little bit more context on some of the topics. And I'm so excited. I know I've said that a bunch, but I am. So let's grow together. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.